Hello, this is trial attorney Neil Redman coming at you from the Long Island Expressway in Queens. Just heading back home after taking my dog to the vet. But I want to talk to you today about settling a case, how to settle a lawsuit. And this is directed to my staff, but I don't know if the general public is interested in this. It might be something that you would want to know as well. So, the number one most important aspect of settling a case is determining how much insurance is available. Okay? So, with respect to car accidents, the minimum amount of insurance that a vehicle in New York State must carry is $25,000 worth of coverage. That's very little coverage, but that is the minimum. And technically it's called 2550, which means that if one person gets into an accident, in other words, if I had 2550 on my car and I was to crash into a carload of people with 5 people in the car and all 5 of them were injured and it was determined to be my fault, then the most that they could get out of that case would be $50,000, and the most any one person could get out of that accident from my insurance company would be $25,000. Okay, so now if they wanted the insurance, if for example they wanted to pursue a case against me personally, they could determine if I had any assets and try to obtain those assets, but that's a much more difficult process and it involves usually going to trial, because generally an individual is just not going to allow you to have access to their assets unless a court or a judge orders it. So there are a variety of other levels of car insurance. If you're involved with an accident which involves a livery taxi, that could be an Uber or a taxi cab or any kind of livery car service, the minimum amount of insurance they have to have is $100,000. So that's a little bit better than the 25, but still it's not a lot of money either. So generally speaking, the more money a person has, the more insurance they want to have, because that's going to protect their personal assets, right? For example, I have my own law firm, so I have on all of my vehicles, I think I have $250,000, $500,000, and then I also have a $1 million umbrella coverage policy, just in case someone was to be injured due to my fault and the value of the case was over $500,000, I still have the umbrella policy. So that's the situation with car policies. If someone is driving a commercial vehicle, like a truck, generally speaking, they have to have, under the law, at least $1 million in coverage. Now, if you're talking about a premises case or a case against the city of New York involving the MTA or the trains, or a medical malpractice case against the city of New York, they are self-insured, meaning that they do not have any policy limits. And so if you were to go to verdict and hit them for $100 million, the jury came back, awarded $100 million, you could potentially get the $100 million. But that takes me to my next point, which is what kind of level of injury does the person have, and will that injury be upheld by the higher courts? Okay, so for example, there are different values to each different kind of accident. All right, so if you were to have a simple broken bone and it was casted, that could be anywhere from $35,000 all the way up to $100,000, depending on the severity of the break, the outcome of the healing process, and any other factors. Now, generally speaking, if you were to have an ankle surgery that required the implantation of metal and screws, that is going to be worth anywhere from $250,000 all the way up to $1 million. Again, there are variables that go into evaluating the value of a case, such as the healing process, how well you healed and how long it took to heal, and are you still having pains and problems. These all go into the pain and suffering equation, right? And the other factor that goes into the pain and suffering is how it's affected your life and then how it's affected your livelihood. So if the process, the healing and everything caused you to not be able to work for a period of time, you're entitled to recover for that amount of what's fair and just compensation for your healing process, right? And if you're going to need or not be able to work into the future, you have to plan out how much you would lose until you hopefully got better. Okay, so these are all factors that have to go into the equation. The issue of injuries to the back and neck get very complicated because, generally speaking, there are two major types of injuries to the neck and the back, and the first one is called a bulging disc, and the other one is called a herniated disc. And a bulging disc is generally not viewed as a permanent condition. The disc is the kind of softer material between the bones within the vertebrae, and it provides a cushion when you bend so that the bones don't crunch into each other. The disc provides that cushion. Now, when you have a bulging disc, that means that either that whole circumference of the disc bulges out a little bit, or a part of it bulges out. To distinguish that between a bulge and a herniation is where there's a hole in the disc and the material inside the disc, which is sort of like the jelly in a jelly donut, comes out of the disc, and that's a herniation. And that's a permanent injury. A bulge can go back to becoming a normal disc with the proper rehabilitation. Now, generally speaking, insurance companies don't view bulging and herniated discs as that serious unless you end up getting a big surgery. There are a number of different types of surgeries that a person with a bulging or a herniated disc can get, and each of those surgeries has a different value. The first type of surgical procedure is an injection. You can get an epidural steroid injection, which kind of is a steroid which bathes the spinal cord in basically a anti-inflammatory type of liquid that causes the tissues around the spinal cord to shrink, and then that causes the spinal cord to get pain relief, because when you have a bulging or a herniated disc, what happens is that the spinal cord itself ends up having pressure put on it from the disc material, or the nerve roots, which are the parts of the spinal cord that come out of the spinal cord that shoot off to the different parts of the body, and they give you sensation in your fingers and your toes and all throughout your body. And the bulging or the herniated disc material can put pressure on those nerve roots or on the spinal cord, and that will cause pain. It will cause pain when you move, mostly. And the other thing that can be done in addition to the epidural steroid injections is that you might get a trigger point injection, which is a more focused injection that is also designed to basically do the